Resourceful Designer, Episode 12, 6 Ways to Boost Your Creativity.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host, he was a whiz on the PMT camera, Mark Decote.
Welcome back to Resourceful Designer. I am so glad that you can join me this week. I think this will be a great episode, and I'm going to share with you different ways to boost your creativity whenever you get into one of those creative ruts. And if you're curious to know what those 6 ways are, they're number 1, put it down on paper or screen. Number 2, step back and have a look. Number 3, occupy your mind with something menial. Number 4, change your perspective, literally. Number 5, change your diet. And number 6, ask for help. And of course, if you're looking for any of the links or anything mentioned in this show, you can find all the show notes at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 12. And I would love for you to head there after listening and maybe leave a comment on what you thought. Or if you want to hit me up and send me something personal, you can use my feedback form at resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback, or you can follow me or send me a message on Twitter at resourcefuld, or on my Facebook page at facebook.com/resourcefuldesigner. And if you are enjoying the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you left me a review in iTunes by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes. Now, as always, I begin every podcast with a resource that I share with you. And this week's resource is ScreenFlow. Now, ScreenFlow is a Mac-only program. If you are on PC, there's another software called Camtasia, or Camtasia Studio, I believe is what it's called. And it does the same thing for PC, but I'm not familiar with Camtasia. I am familiar with ScreenFlow. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, Mark, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a web designer. I don't need to do videos. I'm not into this whole YouTube thing. I don't need ScreenFlow. But let me tell you, ScreenFlow has drastically streamlined the way I run my business. And I'll tell you how. If you design websites, like say you design a WordPress website, one of the things that I used to do is once the website was complete, if a client would be doing anything, making blog posts, or maybe there was a special plugin I installed, like say an event calendar, well, they had to know how to go in and do that. So what I would do is I would pick myself up, leave the house, I would go over to their place of business, sit down with whoever would be working on the website, and I would train them how to go in through the back end of WordPress, because most clients don't know that sort of thing. And I would walk them through how to do all the steps, how to create a blog post, how to update their events calendar, or whatever plugin or whatever they needed to do. And of course, I would be paid for that time, which was great. But what was almost guaranteed to happen was a month later, when they hadn't touched it in several weeks, I would get a phone call and say, Mark, I forgot how to do this. Can you just walk me through this part? Or Mark, I think I messed something up. Can you just have a look? And anyways, and it became routine. And then, of course, there was always the fact that if the person that I trained either left their position or whatever and was no longer working at that company or that organization, then they would call me up and say, Mark, we've got somebody new that doesn't know how to do this. Can you come in and train this person? Well, a couple of years ago, when I first discovered ScreenFlow, I immediately put it into my package. When I sell a website, at the end of the thing, when the website is launched, what I will do is I will create a series of short videos of screen captures where I walk through exactly what to do. You want to create a blog post? Here's how you log in, and I'll tell them to use the credentials that I gave them. You would log in this way. You would go and I show on screen, click here on create new post, and this is how you put in the title, and this is how you would type up the message, and here's how you would format your post, and here's where you would put in your featured image, and so forth. And then that would be that video. Then I would create another video, say for their event calendar, or another video for whatever they would need. And that was part of the website package. And I would send them these videos. And it has been amazing. I haven't had a single client after that point call me up and say, Mark, I don't remember how to do this, or can you walk me through this? Or I think I messed something up, because now they have the video. Anytime they don't remember, they just call up the video and they can watch it again. And best thing is sometimes I'll call back a company 6 months down the road and just to see how things are going, to find out that the person I trained isn't working there anymore. But the new person that's in charge of the website didn't need my help because those videos were already available to them. Because of that, ScreenFlow has saved me so much time where I don't have to go visit clients and teach them over and over or deal with them on the phone where they don't remember what I taught them. Even though they might have taken notes and whatever, they still would call me up and say, Mark, sorry, but I forgot how to do this. Well, now I no longer get those phone calls, and it is wonderful. It was well worth the price of ScreenFlow to get that. Another way that I started using it just recently is, whenever you submit something, like say you have a client and they want you to design logo for them, and you'll give them 3 separate designs. Well, it used to be before computers, when I first got in the industry, I would create 3 different designs and I would present them to the client in person. And then I could give them my rundown of what I did, how I created it, why I created it. Well, nowadays, clients just want you to send them a PDF. And even though you might type up the email and explain each one of the designs, it's not the same because chances are they're going to look at the designs before they even read the email because they're so excited. So sometimes they don't even bother reading the email. So what I started doing is with ScreenFlow, I would actually give a rundown of the logo. Instead of sending a PDF, I would send a video and say, here's image number 1, and this is how I created this. You see this bit of font? This is what I did with this font, or this is what I did different, or this was my reasoning behind using this color or putting this curve on here, or whatever the case may be. And I would walk through each of the 3 logos. That way, the client would have an informed breakdown of everything involved with that logo. And then I feel confident that they can make a good decision based on my presentation and not just on their first initial viewing of the logos. So those are just 2 ways that I've used ScreenFlow. I've never done YouTube videos or anything like that. And I originally thought I don't need something like this. But when I got hold of ScreenFlow, it really changed the way I run my business and saved me so much time. Now, the reason I wanted to share ScreenFlow this week is with Thanksgiving in the US, ScreenFlow is actually available at 30% off. It is at $99 regularly, but if you're listening to this on time and you want to purchase it before November 30th, you can get 30% off. And you can do that by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/screencapture. And that'll redirect you. And that is my affiliate link, so I will get a small commission if you do use that link. But as always, I do not share any of these resources that I don't use and that I don't think would benefit you. So that's ScreenFlow, my resource for this week. Now on with the rest of the podcast. The mind is an amazing machine. It loves routine. It loves efficiency. It loves repetitive tasks that it can do over and over. That's how we can accomplish so many different tasks throughout the day without really thinking of them. Now, some people would call that multitasking. However, when we break out and veer away from those routines, like you and I and us creative types do on a daily basis, we are in effect giving our minds a very stressful workout. Now, these workouts require more concentration, more energy, and more time, which can be mentally exhausting. Our minds actually prefer the simple, repetitive tasks that actually allow them or allow it to refuel and get ready for the next time that we break away from those routines. Now, as I said, we're creative people. We never would have chosen our profession if we weren't. But contrary to what our clients think, we can't just be creative on demand. Creativity is not something that we can turn on from 9 to 5. If you're anything like me, there are many times where you have trouble coming up with creative ideas during your workday when you're sitting in front of the computer working on a client's job. It's kind of like writer's block where they're staring at a blank screen on the computer and have no idea where to go from there. And I'm sure if you've been in this profession long enough, you've experienced that frustration. Now, of course, if we're lucky, we don't have a tight deadline to work on. And we can allow a project to, say, ferment in our mind for maybe a day or two until something wonderful, some amazing design idea emerges. I mean, how often has an idea hit you in the middle of dinner or late in the evening or in the middle of the night even? Now, I don't know about you, but I myself try to avoid working past 5 p.m. I mean, there are days that I do, and there's sometimes I work into the evenings, but for most of it, I stop working at 5 p.m., and that's so I can spend time with my family. But of course, being a creative type, that doesn't mean that I'm not still mentally working. I mean, technically, our profession never turns off. And one of the benefits of working from home is that the office is right there. If an idea hits me in the middle of the night, I can just hop out of bed, grab my sketchbook or my iPad, or come sit down at my computer and get something down. Now, I might not create the entire design in the middle of the night, but putting it down on paper or on screen will give me a springboard to launch from in the morning. And come morning with a fresh pair of eyes, I'll have a look at that idea and see if it was a great idea or just realize how tired I was when I actually came up with it because it was so awful. Now, it would be nice if we always had that time to spend, but unfortunately, we don't always have that option of time. Clients often need their jobs right away and rely on us to produce. Now, in those cases, when we find ourselves in some sort of creative rut and maybe facing an approaching deadline, we sometimes need to step back. If we don't, whatever we do end up creating will most likely be subpar, and our clients don't deserve that, and our reputations don't deserve that. So what do we need to do when we're in a situation where we need to be creative, but we just don't feel it? What we need to do is refuel our mind. And here are my 6 tips for doing just that. Tip number 1, put it down on paper or on screen. Sometimes the best way to get out of a creative rut is to complete your current idea, no matter how bad it is. I mean, have you ever had an idea, like something just pop up into your head and you immediately think it's like, no, that won't work. But then no matter how hard you try, you just can't get beyond that idea? Well, sometimes you just need to do it, even though you know it won't work. Put it down on paper, sketch it out, get in front of your computer or your tablet or whatever, and do it. It's almost like proving to yourself that this idea is no good. And then once it's down and you actually see it, then you can finally move on. It's out of your mind. And that frees up, it's kind of like freeing up memory so that you can move on to the next idea. And who knows, maybe, small possibility, that putting that idea down on paper or on screen might actually show you something that you hadn't realized in your mind, and it might work. Maybe the idea will look like a terrible idea, but if you just change the font, maybe it'll work. Who knows? So that's idea number 1. Put it down on paper or put it down on screen. Getting it out of your mind and in front of you where you can see it visually, it frees up your creativity to now try thinking of something different. So that was tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is step away and have a look. When you're in a creative rut, pounding away at a design will seldom help. You need to actually step away for a bit. Now, this one is a quick way to kind of boost your creativity at times. And I'm actually saying, when I'm saying step away, I mean step back from your computer. Walk away, stroll around the house, take a look out your windows. And then, when you come back, don't just walk up to the computer and sit down. Look at the computer from a distance. You know that any good logo design needs to work at a small scale, which is one of the things that clients don't often see. What happens if you have to put that logo on the side of a pen? Will it work? Well, obviously, whenever we're sitting at our computer designing something, we'll often shrink down in Photoshop, in Illustrator, in whatever program you're working on. You'll shrink it down to see how small it looks or if it still looks readable and good at a small scale. And that's all well and good. You should definitely be doing that anytime you're designing any sort of logo. But what I'm talking about is, instead of shrinking the work on the screen, stand back and look at it. It'll completely change your perspective of it, and I guarantee your whole view of the design will change. There's been so many times when I've been working in Photoshop or Illustrator, and I'm getting frustrated because I know something just isn't working. And I'm looking at it, and I don't know what it is, and I spend hours maybe fiddling with this piece or that piece, and I still can't get it. But then I'll step away, and when I say step away, I actually walk out of my office. Sometimes I'll just walk around the house. Maybe I'll let the dogs out back and call them in a minute later whenever they're done their business. But then when I walk back to the office, I'll stop either in my doorway, or I'm lucky enough that if I'm outside my office, I could stand a good 20, maybe 30. I never actually measured it, but maybe 30 feet away from my computer screen. And I'll stop and I'll look at the design from a distance. And it is not the same thing as being in front of your computer and zooming down so that the image is small on the computer. By standing back, everything looks different. And there has been many times where, using this method, I have picked out exactly what the issue was that I couldn't see when I was sitting right there. So this is kind of a way to boost your creativity, is stand back from the design and have a look. I often do this just to see, is something readable? Does it look the way I intended? Is there anything, especially if you're using stuff with white space, if you're designing a logo with some negative space in there, stand back and have a look at it. And sometimes that'll help you springboard into a different idea. So that's tip number 2. Step away and have a look. Now, tip number 3 is actually the one I use the most often, and that's occupy your mind with something menial. And what I mean by that is something that you don't really have to think about. I mean, take a shower, go do the dishes, walk the dog, vacuum the house, whatever. My go-to task, since I work from home, is to take a shower. I'll be honest with you, most days when I get up and it's time for me to sit down and work after the kids are gone to school and my wife has left, I'll sit down to work and I'm still in my bathrobe. But who cares? I'm working from home. And if during the morning I'm working on something and I feel that something, my creativity isn't there, or I'm trying to think of something and I just can't seem to get it, I'll just back away, get up, and go have a shower. I mean, usually by lunchtime, when it's time for me to break for lunch, if I haven't had my shower, I'll have it then. But there's been times where I've actually used the shower. Now, I'm sure you've heard before how some people think better in the shower, and some people say it's the white noise of the water falling, which I'm sure does help. But to me, I believe it's the mindless routine of washing. I mean, you don't really think about washing when you're in the shower. It's not like you grab the bar of soap and say, oh, well, now I got to wash my left arm and now I'm going to do my left armpit. Now I'll switch the bar of soap to my other hand and I'll wash my right arm and then my right armpit. No, you don't think of that sort of stuff. You just grab the soap and you wash. It's a mindless routine that you're doing, something menial, that frees up your mind to do other things. I mean, has this ever happened to you where you're in the shower for a long time and all of a sudden you think to yourself, did I wash my hair or didn't I? I mean, I don't know how many times I've reached up and squeezed my hair through my fingers just to listen to see if it squeaks, because if it squeaks, I know I washed it, because I honestly don't remember if I washed it or not. But I can tell you during those times in the shower are some of the times where I've come up with the most creative ideas. And it's maybe a combination of the white noise of the water and the menial task. But it really does help to free up your mind, rejuvenate it, refuel it, and get those creative juices flowing again. Now, of course, I'm a shower once a day kind of guy, so what happens if I'm already squeaky clean? Well, this is when you can find some other task to do, some other menial task. Something like doing the dishes. Doing the dishes is not something you really have to concentrate on. You're just washing dishes. You don't have to think it's like, okay, I got to take the rag and put it in at this angle and put it in at that angle and squeeze or rub this hard. No, you see dirt, you just rub it off. You're not really thinking about it. And doing these sort of things, any sort of chore that's repetitive, washing the dishes, folding the laundry, sweeping the floor, making the bed, any of these things that your mind is used to. Remember I said earlier that the mind loves routines? These are routines, and these are what refuel your mind and get your creative juices flowing again. Now, in my case, they also have the added benefit of giving me brownie points with my wife, something that no man can ever have enough of. I mean, after all, there's always chores to do, aren't there? So that's tip number 3. Occupy your mind with something menial. And this has been the one that works best for me. Now, tip number 4 is change your perspective. Now, this is the one that you might say, Mark, you're crazy. I'm not going to try this. But trust me, it does actually work, and I have actually used this. And if you're working from home like I am, there's nobody around to see you. I mean, in my case, I have the dogs, but they don't judge me. So what I'm talking about when I say change your perspective is that you normally, when you're going around your house, you have a certain perspective of anything. Change that to a perspective you're not used to. Try lying down on the bathroom floor. Or one I like to do is actually lie down in the stairwell if you have one and look up at the stairwell. If you're a parent, go lie down in your kid's bed if it's something you're not used to doing, or maybe in the spare room. I know it sounds crazy, but as your mind takes in all the familiar details, but at an unfamiliar angle, it will shift and change and recharge itself. The mind is always seeking to make sense of the things that it sees. Anything that seems surreal or absurd puts the mind into overdrive for a short period while it tries to work out just exactly what it's looking at. And during those periods, your creative juices start flowing in a completely alien way, and who knows what ideas you could come up with. As I said, it sounds crazy, but it works. I have done this before. I have, just for no apparent reason, when I was in a creative rut, I'd lie down on the bathroom floor. Or as I said, I have many times lied down in the stairs and just stared up. And it has worked. I mean, not all the time. There are times when it's going to take a crowbar to get out of that creative rut. But who knows? It's worth a try. So that's tip number 4. Change your perspective. Now, if I didn't scare you away with that last one and you're still listening to the podcast, tip number 5 is feed your brain. When you find yourself needing a boost in creativity, have yourself a snack. Food not only refuels the body, it refuels your mind as well. And I'm not talking junk food. That's one of the problems of working from home, and I know I can attest to it. I'm guilty of this, is I have my entire pantry right in the next room. I have the fridge. I have my freezer downstairs full of stuff. And it's so quick and easy to just want to grab a cookie or grab something that's junk and eat it and then get back to work. But if you really want to feed your brain, which will help your creativity, you should try to eat healthy, what they call quote unquote brain foods. Foods that are proven to boost creativity and mental awareness. Things like nuts or berries, anything whole grain, so bread, bagels, muffins, anything whole grain, which releases glucose into your blood. And when that blood goes to your brain, it helps keep you mentally alert throughout the day. Broccoli is a great source of vitamin K, which is known to enhance cognitive functions and improve brain power. Tomatoes, fish, all these things help your mind. And by helping your mind, it'll help your creativity. If you're feeling a little lackluster at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, grabbing a chocolate bar might give you that sugar boost that'll get your body going, but it really won't help your mind and your creativity. Now, this one here is obviously not a get out of jail free card. This is something you should be doing on a regular basis. I mean, if you're finding yourself working on something and you're in a creative rut, going to grab a handful of nuts probably won't help you. But if you regularly snack on healthy foods, you will find that you will be more creative, you will have more energy, and just your whole mental awareness will be higher than if you didn't really care what you ate. So that's tip number 5, feed your brain. And finally, tip number 6 is ask for help. I mean, I love working from home. I've been doing it for 10 years now, and I don't think I would ever go back to working in an office environment or for somebody else. I love the freedom that working at home has. You know, I can sit down and I can work on a job, and if I don't feel like working on the job, I can go out and mow my lawn. I can go do errands if I need to and decide to work later. I know I mentioned I don't work often past 5 o'clock, but if I have a doctor's appointment or I have to drive one of the kids somewhere during the day, I can make up for that time in the evening. And as I mentioned in previous podcasts, when you're working from home, you can make the same amount of money as you would be working in a studio or in an agency or whatever, but for a lot less billable hours, which can, depending on how you want to use it, free up your time for other things. But the drawback of working from home is the isolation. You have to be somebody who is comfortable working by yourself and has the discipline to work by themselves. Some people think it'd be great to not have a boss, but when they sit down at home, they get distracted. They got the TV, they've got video games, they've got Facebook, they've got all sorts of stuff. And next thing you know, the whole day has gone by and they haven't done any work. So working from home does have its pros and cons. Now, of course, one of those cons is you are alone. You don't have anybody really to bounce ideas off right there. When I worked at the printing shop, the other designers and I would routinely bounce ideas off one another. We'd discuss each of our projects, and once we had something, we'd ask for critiques. And of course, that's a great way to boost your creativity, is to get critiques, get ideas from others, because they would look at it differently than the way you're looking at it. And by doing that, you could learn stuff which in turn boosts your creativity. Sometimes just talking about a job out loud with somebody else, even without showing them anything, can create some sort of spark in you that may lead to a completely different creative direction. So if you're working from home and you are alone, I encourage you to seek out some way to share with others, to ask for help. Whether it's joining Facebook groups, and there are a lot of great Facebook groups out there. I'm part of a few different ones where people regularly will share their ideas, their logos, their designs, and ask people, what do you think? Or how can I improve this? And they get great feedback. There are graphic design forums out there you can join. There's stuff like Behance and other platforms where you can share your ideas and get critiques. Now, some of these you do have to be careful with because some of the people that will critique them might not necessarily know what they're talking about. So that's why sometimes it's good to create a network of either friends or specifically other designers that you may know who you can bounce ideas off of and you can trust. Ask family and friends. I've often asked my kids when they get home from school, I'll call them into the office and ask for their opinion on something I'm working on. And there have often been times when something they've told me has resonated and I'd said, you know what, you're right. I hadn't noticed that, or that's a good idea you had, and I'll take something in a different direction. They're not graphic designers, but that doesn't mean they don't have good ideas as well. Or they can spot a problem maybe that I don't see because I've been too close to it. Every little bit of interaction helps. And just because we're working from home doesn't mean we have to be working alone. So ask for help. Share your designs with others and get feedback. And not just from your clients. I mean, they will give you really good feedback, but sometimes it's really beneficial to get feedback from a third, uninvolved party, because they will give you the most honest feedback because they have no investment in the job. So there you have it. 6 ways to boost your creativity. Once again, number 1 was put it down on paper or on screen. Get it out of your head and move on. Number 2, step back and have a look. Standing far back from your computer can create a whole new perspective of what you're looking at, and maybe you'll see something you didn't see before. Number 3, occupy your mind with something menial. Sometimes the most simple tasks, things you don't even have to think about, will get your mind working in a completely different way that will allow it to work through the problem you're facing without you even realizing it. And before you know it, a solution appears. Number 4, change your perspective, literally. I know it sounds crazy, but when your mind sees something weird or different, it tries to make sense of it, and it starts working faster and harder. And use that, bounce off that, and use it to fuel your creativity into something different. Number 5, change your eating habits, change your diet. What you put in to fuel your body is also fueling your mind. So make good choices. There are lots of places you can search online for brain foods or foods that would enhance your memory or your mind. Have a look and see if you can incorporate them into your meal plans. And number 6 that I just finished talking about was ask for help. Just because we work from home by ourselves doesn't mean we have to work alone. Reach out to other designers. Ask for their opinions. Join online groups, forums, anything you can do to get conversation going. It'll only help you in the end. So that's it for this episode. I would love for you to leave me a comment. Let me know if you've used any of these methods or if there's some other method that I didn't mention that you use on a regular basis to help boost your creativity. Just leave me a comment at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 12. Or if you want to send me something personally, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and just use the form on that page. I would also love to know if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Now, another way to get out of your creative rut is to take a break from your client work and work on your own stuff. And if you want to create the best first impression for when clients discover you online, you would benefit from my free 4-week marketing boost guide. And you can get that by visiting marketingboost.net. Now, in next week's episode, being just a few weeks away from Christmas, I'm going to talk about some gift ideas for your graphic design studio. So that's it for this podcast. Enjoy the rest of November and keep up the great work on your business. I'm Mark Decote, and until next time, stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.